After a polarizing freshman season at Rutgers, Ace Bailey stood out as maybe the most controversial prospect of the last few years, raising questions like, do his strengths outweigh his weaknesses? Can his best skills translate to the next level? And what would a role on a winning team look like? Well, now that year one is coming to an end, I think it's safe to say we've found some answers. If you follow the NBA draft on Twitter, then you know that side of the community is often split into two extremes. You have those who believe in analytics, sometimes a little too much, and you have those who believe breaking down a prospect into a series of numbers does a disservice to the game. On one hand, you had a loud crowd of Ace Bailey believers. Between his size, athleticism, and shot-making ability, he often looked like a superstar, especially at his ceiling. He had some massive scoring performances while producing highlight after highlight. However, that came with some notable red flags in his profile. At Rutgers, he was a high-usage player who had real offensive primacy, meaning he was often relied on to create his own shot with the ball. When it comes to projecting on-ball creation at the NBA level, there's almost always a certain set of traits you have to possess outside of a few outliers. First is the ability to generate easy shots for yourself. Unless you're a 99th percentile three-point shooter, this generally means getting around defenders from a standstill and putting consistent pressure on the basket. Bailey only took 21% of his shots at the rim, and because he wasn't a volume three-point guy, that meant he took about half of his shots from mid-range. He was able to get away with it thanks to some unbelievable shot making, but I want you to think about how that translates to the next level. If you aren't getting clean blow-bys and easy scoring opportunities in college, how do you expect to make it happen against NBA caliber athletes? The second key trait that on-ball creators almost always possess is the ability to get to the free throw line, which ties into my first point about creating easy shots for yourself. If you can generate consistent rim pressure and create those big advantages, teams are gonna be forced to foul. Then with the addition of some craft and use of contact, you can become a foul drawing machine. Bailey didn't have the pressure or the craft, resulting in an extremely low free throw rate. Without layups or free throws, you become a lot more reliant on jump shooting, which of course creates volatility. The third and final key trait that on-ball creators almost always possess is high-end passing talent. I don't mean you have to be Jokic or Luka, but the ability to consistently leverage your scoring threat into high-quality opportunities for teammates is often what separates true offensive engines from bucket getters. You could argue that this was Bailey's biggest weakness coming out. He struggled with tunnel vision at times and generally only made basic passing reads. So, despite having the ball quite a bit, he barely averaged an assist a game while turning it over at a much higher rate. Barring outlier development, there really wasn't a pathway for Ace to become a volume creator in the NBA. And I think that's what made him so polarizing. You see the shot-making ability. You see the natural scoring talent in an oversized athletic wing. You see the youth, as well as a willingness to learn and grow. You see the big game ceiling. So those talking points started to dominate the conversation as opposed to serious discussion about which tools could translate. And what got lost in all of this was that he had a lot of green flags. That starts with his physical tools. He's officially listed at 6'9" with a 7'1" wingspan, and he's pretty gifted vertically. More importantly, he clearly knew how to use his size and athleticism to make winning plays. On defense, he was a legitimate rim presence who could make a wide variety of plays. He could also close possessions on the glass while consistently extending them for his team as an offensive rebounder. His true superpower, though, was the shot making. He took a lot of mid-range shots. He also made a lot of them. About 48% to be exact, and that's a heavy 48%. It didn't matter if he was smothered by a contest, drifting in either direction, fading away, or off balance, he never found a shot he didn't like. Between his size and an absurd elevation on his jumper, he could truly rise up whenever he wanted. Which begged the question, what if the mid-range game was used more as a counter than a go-to, and he instead started hunting for threes? In my opinion, his big swing skill coming into the league was whether or not he could increase his three-point volume while remaining somewhat efficient. If so, there was a very obvious role for him, but it might not have been what you thought. The ideal role for Bailey to make an impact at the NBA level would have to start on defense, finding ways to leverage those raw tools into serious defensive value by developing into a legit secondary rim protector, using his length to plug gaps and make plays on the ball, and putting on muscle to deal with physicality. Then on offense, spending most of his time away from the ball, either spotting up or running around screens. In these spots, you want him to look for the three-point shot with volume, then then use that threat to create rim pressure in a variety of ways, like attacking closeouts, countering aggressive coverage with timely cuts, and getting on the offensive glass for extra scoring opportunities. From there, the mid-range game can be used as a fallback option or a button for his team's offense to press when needed. Maybe he gets run off the line and there's no pathway to the basket. He can pull up. Maybe an opponent puts a small guard on him and he attacks that mismatch in the mid-post. If you could find a way to get him off the ball, playing on the move and pressuring all three levels, there's a seriously versatile two-way player. And what better place to develop than Will Hardy's Utah Jazz? If you're looking to become more versatile yourself, you should check out today's sponsor, Vuori. In the past year, Vuori became a big part of my wardrobe because of their versatility, allowing you to dress for any occasion and look fly while keeping the comfort of casual at-home attire. So whether you're looking to hit the gym or go out to dinner, they've got the perfect product for you. This is the Beach Fleece crew neck, which is ultra soft to the touch with a perfect relaxed fit. So you get the comfort and warmth of a sweatshirt with the elevated style of a sweater. But if it's a bit warmer out, you can go with the Stratotech Polo, which is super breathable with a polished look. Perfect for golfing, going out to eat, and everything in between. When shopping at Vuori, you'll find lifestyle options, activewear, workout gear, and even loungewear for around the house. And if you're a first-time shopper, you can receive 20% off your first purchase if you sign up for emails. So once again, I want to thank Vuori for sponsoring this video and for filling out my closet. If you're interested, head to VuoriClothing.com or click the link in the description. Since hiring Will Hardy in 2022, Utah's had one of the NBA's most distinct offensive schemes. Whereas most teams build their offense around an on-ball creator either isolating or running pick and roll, the Jazz built their offense around off-ball screens. I don't mean a motion offense like the Warriors where you've got Steph flying all over the court and getting into 3 different actions. It's more akin to what the Pacers did with Reggie Miller in the 90s. They'd start an initiator up top with Miller on the baseline, then bring him towards the ball with a down screen to curl into open space. Only in the modern era, this often means starting a shooter deep in the corner, having him curl around the perimeter and look for the three-point shot. Their go-to guy in these spots has been Lauri Markkanen, who's averaged an extremely efficient 24 points a game during his 4 years in Utah. That 24 comes from little self-creation. He's mastered the art of using movement to create options. As a 7'1" sniper, he can access the three-point shot almost whenever he wants. If he's looking to curl off a screen and his defender overplays, he's got the size and athleticism to counter with backdoor cuts. If he gets around a screen and gets chased off the line, he can use his length to attack open space and create downhill pressure. Lowry's essentially as good as it gets when it comes to maximizing these sorts of actions. But coming into the season, I couldn't help but wonder what Bailey would look like in his place. He's not as big, but like I said, his size and elevation still enable him to get jumpers off at will. He's agile, has really good instincts as a cutter, and can finish vertically. He's long, capable of attacking on the move, and can create off-the-catch rim pressure. Then there's the added bonus of a strong mid-range game that he'll use to counter a packed paint. All things considered, if the goal was to mold Ace Bailey into a go-to scorer, I think that would be the pathway. As a 19-year-old coming in, there's naturally been a bit of a learning curve. For one, he's still figuring out how to use his length as a driver. His handle isn't the tightest, so he can struggle taking an extra dribble or two through traffic. That means he relies on early pickups, gathering as soon as he feels pressure, and using elongated strides to get as close to the basket as possible. He can get away with it sometimes, but by nature of having a lankier frame, he tends to shy away from contact. Against physical defense, he'll often get bumped off his path, and without a live dribble to fall back on, he's forced into tougher looks. Which takes me back to what I said about him struggling to create easy opportunities for himself, in turn keeping him off the free throw line. And that's something Will Hardy's talked about.
If you look at really any of the top scorers in the NBA, the free throw line's a big part of it. And I think he's recognizing when he has to just play through the contact, when you have the angle on the defender and the rules are on your side.
Along with some functional driving limitations, his shot selection can still be a bit questionable at times. It's not rare for a rookie to experiment, but he tends to find himself in situations where he curls off a screen on the perimeter, takes one dribble inside the arc, and stops for an extremely long two. As the seasons progress though, he's gotten better and better in each of these areas, and the last month has been really promising. Lauri Markkanen hasn't played in a basketball game since February 23rd. Jaren Jackson Jr. hasn't played since February 11th, and Walker Kessler missed basically the entire season. This front court is thin right now, and the silver lining is that it's forced them to run through Ace Bailey a lot more. If we split his season up into the first 52 games and his last 14, it's a stark difference. He's scoring more, he's shooting more, he's assisting on more shots and turning it over more. His volume is just up across the board. What's so impressive though is that with the added primacy, not only has he been more efficient, the team's been significantly more efficient during his minutes, and that's because his process changed. In the last 14 games, he's operated with a completely different shot diet. Threes now account for over half of his attempts, and I can't stress enough just how much that's changed his game. He's letting that thing fly with one of the quickest triggers in basketball. During this stretch, he's attempted more than 10 threes every 75 possessions, which would be the 5th most of any player in the NBA. The size and elevation have always been there. He's finally unlocked the mindset to hunt for long-range jumpers relentlessly. That's especially noticeable in off-screen situations. Anytime his defender goes under, that's his cue to turn and shoot. Anytime his defender gets hit by a screen and he's got an inch of breathing room, same thing. He's even comfortable catching the ball on the move, then taking an extra dribble or two to shift his momentum and create separation. In spot-up situations, he's catching and shooting in tight windows or over the top of closeouts. Even in a rare isolation, one of his go-tos is this exaggerated hang dribble to threaten a drive before pulling up in a defender's grill. Remember, I said that the biggest swing skill for him was whether or not he could up his three-point volume while remaining semi-efficient. So the only question left to ask is how good of a shooter he is. This season, he's taken over 350 three-pointers and he's hit about 35.5% of them. Considering the degree of difficulty on some of these, and that he's just now experimenting with shooting upwards of 10 a game for the first time, that's an extremely impressive mark. Now think about a couple years down the line, if he's able to get that up to 37 or 38% while maintaining his volume. Not only would that take his scoring to another level, it would open up so much for the offense. We're already seeing defenders hug him on the perimeter, which creates opportunities to cut back door. We're already seeing defenders close out hard to take away the jumper, which creates opportunities to drive with an advantage. We're already seeing defenders top lock off-ball screening actions to deny the ball, which again creates backdoor cuts. When coming around screens, defenders almost always chase him over the top while trying to stay attached, which helps him get into the paint. And maybe most importantly, he's already showcasing the quick decision making you want to see off the catch and finding ways to create for his teammates. Like I mentioned earlier, these aren't going to be high level reads, but when he draws that added attention, he's looking for the open man, and his size helps him access tons of different angles. I just think the next step for him is improving his process as a driver, weaponizing his length, adding some strength and embracing contact, continuing to not settle when there's a lane to attack. Going back to that improved shot diet for a sec, if he can get that rim percentage back up to the 20s while keeping his 3-point percentage around 50 and upping his free throw rate a little bit, that's a seriously dangerous off-ball scoring weapon. And the reason this is so important is because he's already contributing on the margins. The little things are often what separates winning players from empty stats. Among forwards, Bailey's already a well above average offensive rebounder who picks up steals and blocks. With some better work on the defensive glass, he's someone who can make a serious difference on the scoreboard without shooting the ball. As for the defensive side of things, it's hard to evaluate given the situation. Utah's the worst defense in the NBA. They're actively trying to lose, and they've deployed Bailey as a bit of a Swiss Army knife, experimenting with him on different positions and types of players. From what I've seen, the on-ball defense has been a bit of a mixed bag. It's clear just how much he needs to bulk up. Sturdier creators are able to get up into his body and bump him off his spot with ease. At times, he can also get flat-footed in space, and that's when he'll get caught off balance or struggle to cut off quicker ball handlers. However, he's tall, long, and moves really well laterally. At his best, he'll string together really good possessions in space, showing some switchability and at times even fighting through screens. His primary role on defense, though, has been that of a helper behind the play. Especially now that the front court's been gutted, he's often relied on as a last line of defense. His activity in these spots really stands out, although he's still figuring out his timing, positioning, and reads like any normal rookie. Much like the offensive growth, though, there's been serious in-season progression when it comes to play recognition and timely rotations. And when he's making the right decision, he's got insane range as an athlete, capable of covering tons of ground. Near the basket, he's a pretty natural rim protector who can get vertical and target the ball, so there's a legit shot blocking presence. Moving forward, the one thing I'd really like to see is more defensive playmaking. He doesn't really use his length to pick up deflections or take away passing lanes, and I think that's the next step for him. As he continues to figure out these defensive reads, I think he's got the potential to become a seriously valuable off-ball defender. But it's interesting to think about that within the context of Utah's current roster. With everyone healthy, he'll probably play in a lot of jumbo lineups where he'll be used at the point of attack. Of course, that'll come with lots of switching, and if he can add some functional strength, now we're talking about someone who really moves the needle. All things considered, the flashes of a high-impact two-way forward are absolutely there. Between the off-ball play on offense and defensive versatility, there's an all-star caliber player in there if everything actualizes. I don't think he'll ever be a traditional all-star from the standpoint of someone who's going to light up the stat sheet with points, rebounds, and assists, or dictate the offense as a creator. I view him as a guy whose additive skills could stack up to the impact of an all-star on the margins, helping his team win battles related to three-pointers, turnovers, and rebounds. Keep in mind, he's shown all of this in-season growth as a 19-year-old. By building the right habits, maximizing his body, and continuing to grow, I feel confident in saying that he should be viewed as a cornerstone of Utah's future.